Okay, I think we can get started. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining again. Today, maybe some of you were in yesterday's Q&A session as well. So today's topic of this webinar is part of the masterclass about proposal writing that we have in November, is the role of the proposal. So we'll be talking a little bit about the role of the proposal in the application process. And I'll already give you a couple of tips for proposal writing that will not be included in next week's webinar, because next week we'll talk about proposal writing itself. So we will talk about the meat of the proposal, what's in there, what you have to include, how to structure it, etc. So today is going to be the preparation for that, so that you know why you need it, what to put in there, just in general, talking about ideas, and that you have a better idea. We'll also talk a little bit about the title that you can give your proposal and the cover letter, because that will not be covered next week. Again, this time the chat is working perfect, so that's been figured out already. If you have any questions for me at the end, we will have time for questions. You can use the Q&A box again, and then I will go through those questions, because if you put them in the chat, I probably won't find them. And I can already tell you that at the end, we have two great offers for you that we don't have all the time. So stay tuned, and we will share with you two amazing tools that can actually help you to find donors, to know where you're situated, how to connect, etc. So I think I'll just start with sharing my screen. So today's topic, like I said, is the role of the proposal in the fundraising cycle. So we'll talk about why a proposal is important, why proposal writing is so important. Then just in general, an introduction, what is a proposal? You probably all know that if you've joined here, but still it's good to be on the same page, to have the same definitions that we're working with. Then we'll talk about who should be involved in the proposal writing process. So who should be on your team, who should give input, etc. We'll talk a little bit about the grant cycle. We've done that last week, but I just want to make sure that you know where we are with this session. And then we'll talk about some tips for your proposal that are a little bit more broad than what we will talk about next week. So why is proposal writing so important? As we said last time, many people even think fundraising is proposal writing, as if it was exactly the same. It's not the same. We've already discussed that, but it is an integral part. And if you're bad at proposal writing, your chances of success are probably going to be very low. So you do need to master that skill to be successful in fundraising. Obviously, the other steps are also very important, but this one is also crucial, because that is when you submit something on paper to a donor. So with a proposal that you send, a document where you describe your project and you put it out there for the donor to decide if they do want to fund it or not, you have an opportunity to distinguish yourself from the competition. Because we'll see on the next slides, competition is fierce. There are so many NGOs out there, so many competitors, and this has become much more difficult with the internet. Because if you think back, maybe many of you are probably very young, but if you think back 20 years ago, not everybody even had access to the internet. Many people didn't. And so all this information wasn't shared as widely as it is today. But today, everybody from the tiniest NGO in the last corner of India can join an online course, can join a webinar and learn about these things and become really, really great. Before, it was very difficult when you had to travel to attend a workshop. It was expensive, etc. But now everybody can learn anything. So it's a very different situation. Competition is fierce, and you do want to distinguish yourself, your project, your organization from the competition. And a great proposal is one way to do that, because that is something that the donor will read of you, and something that will be shared, and that they can decide upon if it's fine. Maybe my team can just check once if it's recording. I know I had to click recording is okay, but I don't see that recording button at the moment. So maybe you can just check it once. Maybe I just can't see it because I have the full screen. just to make sure that this is recording correctly so that we can share it afterwards if needed. If you write a proposal and sit down and really write down what you want to do, it also helps you to develop the project. We often say you need a project plan first, and then you can develop the proposal based on that. But if you want to start with a proposal, obviously that also helps you to develop a project plan, because you do have to sit down and write down your ideas. You have to write down what exactly you want to fund, what exactly are your indicators, how big is the budget, because you need to know that to submit a proposal. And that will really help you to become much more clear, because as long as you don't write things down, as you don't really plan them out, you have ideas, but you don't have projects. When you really write them down, plan everything out, understand how much stuff you need, how much material you need, how would be the timeline, etc., then it starts to become a project and you can actually tackle it. So it really helps you with that. And proposals are a communication tool for external and internal communication. So you can use them, change them up a bit, maybe take out the case studies, use those for marketing, for social media, etc., just reaching out to people. And the same goes for internal conversations, because you can also share what you want to do, your project plans, your plans for the future through proposals with your internal team, because everybody needs to be on the same page, and maybe not everybody knows everything. But if you have proposals, if you develop proposals, you can share them, and that will also make sure that your entire team is on the same page. So when we talk about competition, we have to see both sides of the coin, because yes, there's a lot of competition. We'll look at that on the next slide, but there's also a lot of opportunity. So becoming good at proposal writing is actually something that will be hugely beneficial for you, because there's not only more competition, but also more opportunity out there, because you are also one of those people who can use the internet and you can learn about calls, open calls, you can network with donors, you can use all those tools, Zoom, etc., to connect and to develop relationships. And those are amazing opportunities. If you see those numbers, and I think since we've took them, the statistics, it has even grown. So in the European Union alone, there's around 150,000 foundations, big foundations sometimes, that give millions of dollars, or euros in that case. So there is a lot of opportunity. Same goes for the United States. That is 150,000 by now. 150,000 foundations. Obviously, some of them only give within the United States, some only give locally or regionally, but many do give internationally. And that is a huge potential. And you don't even always have to look for foundations in developed countries, but even in countries that we might not have on our mind immediately when we think of donor countries, there are many foundations. So in Asia alone, in the Asia Pacific region, there are around 50,000 foundations that you can also apply with. And when you are based in one of those countries, you actually even have better chances, because they tend to want to fund local projects and regional projects. So you have amazing chances there. So keep that in mind when you do your donor research. But like I said, at the same time, there's more competition. So if you look at the US, we just saw 150,000 foundations, yes, but 1.6 million charities who might apply for funding. Not all of them are fundraising entities. Not all of them write proposals, but still there is competition. If you just look at India alone, but India is one of the countries with the highest density of NGOs. It's 3.4 million NGOs only in India. Not all of them active, not all of them fundraising, and maybe few of them fundraising internationally, but they are all out there and might be competition. In the UK, it's 170,000 around charities. So you do have to keep in mind that you have to be better or different. You have to have a unique selling point for your project if you want to compete in this market that has become more and more crowded, with more people entering, more projects arising. Obviously also in some cases, the situation getting more difficult for people so that the need for a project has become bigger. So again, in this market, you have to be better or be different at least to distinguish yourself. And writing amazing proposals is going to be one tool that can actually help you do that, and that can help you through that process. I've mentioned this quote last week, I think, but I really like it. And I think it goes for the strategy, it goes for different aspects, but it's also true for the proposal writing, for the proposal process. It's always better to be a proactive fundraiser than a reactive grant seeker. So when you access this entire, or when you look at this entire section, this entire issue, from a perspective like, what do you want to do? What do you want to implement? What are the projects that you want to do? And then you go out actively looking for donors, incorporating what you learn in the process, then you are active, and it gives you an active role, which is always better than just waiting for calls to trickle in and to react and to write something. So when you are good at proposal writing, you develop your own projects, and you can go out with those and find donors that fit for your projects, and then adjust the proposal, make sure that it's a good fit for that particular donor. If you just sit back and wait and then write something when somebody asks you specific things, or when you just write proposals according to when you find a call and you just fill out forms, etc., that doesn't give you a lot of agency. So being active in this is always a good call. So what is a proposal? I've been talking about proposals for quite a while already. A project proposal is a document that should entail all the information needed for someone to decide if the project is worthwhile to implement. So we use the word proposal in different circumstances. In a project proposal, obviously, you're presenting your project, the work that you want to do. But you know the word proposal as well in the context of a marriage proposal. And when you think back at what we talked about when we were talking about the grant cycle, a lot of the things that we said there are true also when you think of it as a marriage proposal, because it's kind of, you're proposing to the donor to be your partner. It's not just about money. You're not like begging for money. You're not asking them to support you because out of the goodness of their heart. You're offering something as well. You are offering a partnership. You are offering your staff, your ability, your skills of implementing their vision, their goals, and helping them to achieve their objectives. So you are offering something, a partnership, and that's what you should always be after when you fundraise, a partnership, instead of like a relationship that is maybe the donor is up here, you're down here. That's not supposed how it's supposed to be. You should try to aim for a partnership, try to aim for an eye-to-eye level, and yeah, then the proposal kind of is the question: do you want to go with us? Do you want to partner up? And do you want to support this project financially? Obviously, the donor has more power because they can decide yes or no. But still, like begging for money, making yourself small, asking for favors is not what you're doing. You have skills and you have knowledge that the donors do not have, and they need you. So obviously, you cannot approach them like in a rude manner or arrogantly or anything like that. But like I said, you should aim for eye-to-eye level. And here the proposal is the document that you present with all the necessary information so that donors can decide, yes, this looks like a good partner, we want to work with them, or maybe no, this partnership doesn't look like it will work, so we'll have to change it up, or we have to do something differently. So that is basically the proposal that you send out, the document where you have the information. When you write proposals, they also help you to plan strategically. We said before, you shouldn't start with a proposal, but obviously that doesn't mean that you can't do any work on the proposal before the very last stage of the fundraising cycle. You can start a proposal and have because some aspects of it won't change. You have to, when you apply with a specific donor, you have to adjust your project to what they want to fund, because they will only fund what falls under their goals, under their objectives. So it has to be aligned. But obviously, there's a couple of things that you can already work on before. Knowing, in this case, a proposal is maybe not a proposal yet, but still something like a project plan. And a project plan or like a draft proposal will help you with many things, because if you draft a budget, for example, it will tell you exactly how much money you need. So it will make donor research so much easier, because you know if you're looking for 10,000 or for 50,000. And that sounds simple, but it can be very complicated, because sometimes until you really calculate, you don't know how much something will cost. I cannot tell you how many times I was completely off in my calculations when I was working in Nepal, when I was planning something, and sometimes I thought in my head, I will need around 5,000 for this, and it ended up being 15. And sometimes I thought, oh, well, this will be so expensive, we'll need 20 at least, and we were able to finish it at 5. So until I sat down and really planned my budget, I didn't know. And that also didn't help me with my donor research, because I was looking for the wrong donors. If you look for, if you need 5,000 and you're looking for donors that fund 100,000, it's not a good fit, and vice versa. If you need 100,000, don't research donors that only give 5,000. So you need to know those things. Also with the activities, sometimes when you start thinking about a project, you know what you want to achieve, you know what your objectives are, but you don't know your strategies yet. But again, that will influence heavily which donor might fund you and how you should set up your donor research. So those things are really important, and they help you to plan strategically. Maybe they will also open up opportunities for something like a crowdfunding campaign, working with businesses, etc. But all of that will only open up if you know where you want to go. And if you don't know that, if you haven't written it down, planned it out, then you don't know who to approach, and your donor research will be a bit all over the map. So to avoid that, write the project plan, a draft proposal, however you want to call it, and also think of how that will help you to plan strategically, because it will put numbers on a time frame, and that's always a great idea to actually move forward and achieve something. Who should be involved in writing the proposal? That's a common question that we always get, because I know if you are a fundraiser, then your seniors probably tell you, oh, well, you're the fundraiser, so you write all the proposals. But as you probably also know, that is not possible. It's almost impossible to write a proposal by yourself, because if you are not everything in one person, if you have a team of more than 2 people, then you need help with the proposal, because you will just not know everything. You don't have all the information. And it's important for everybody in your organization to understand that they have a role to play. They have something to contribute to the proposal writing process. So obviously, if you are the fundraiser, you will probably be the lead. You will coordinate, you will organize the process. You will tell people what they have to do, at which point in time, and how they should do it. But you need input from people like a project manager, because they have the best insights into the project. And if they are planning a new project, or if you are writing a proposal for a project that you haven't written a proposal for before, you need that input. Otherwise, how are you going to describe the project the way it's actually supposed to work? If you have field staff, they also very often have stuff to contribute, because they know the situation out. They know the situation in the communities, they know what is needed, they know obstacles, they know struggles, and you need to know all of that information to write good proposals. Then obviously accountants, if you have an accountant on your team, bring them on board, because writing the budget is difficult, and often it's something fundraisers don't like. Many people go into fundraising that have a very high level of people skills. And I don't want to say that everybody who has people skills doesn't know how to do math, but often it's the case that we lean into one of those directions. So if we are amazing with people, many people tend to not be great in analytical thinking, just to generalize a bit. So often the budget is a big challenge if you're a fundraiser. because there's so many different things you have to keep in mind. There's a contingency cost, there's taxes, there's salaries, and then just putting 33% of this in here and 66% of that in there, and it can become very, very difficult. So if you have an accountant, bring them on and ask them for help, ask them to support you, ask them to look at your budget, recalculate what you have done a couple of times so that there's no mistakes, because the budget is extremely important in your proposal. We often say the budget is the description of your project in numbers. So that's a big argument for the donors to fund you. I know many people, when they read a proposal, they read the introduction and then they flip to the budget. So it's extremely, extremely important. If you can get professional help from your accountant, then take it and take advantage of that. And anybody else who works probably also has some input. If you have someone taking care of marketing, public relations, they will have input. They will have maybe pictures, case studies, some ideas, etc. So make it a team effort and collect all of that knowledge. But as the fundraiser, you probably have to be the one that coordinates everything, that keeps the deadlines in mind, etc. Then another question that we get a lot is if you should outsource your proposal writing, because that's very common. I think once there's a little bit of budget, NGOs are looking for proposal writers to outsource this. But we always recommend not to do that because we think it's not a good idea. On the one hand, like you saw, even if you outsource your proposal writing, you will still do most of the work, because if your internal fundraiser doesn't know everything, imagine how little an external fundraiser would know. So if you bring someone in who has never worked with your organization before and who doesn't know your projects that well, you will need to give them a lot of input. You will need to work a lot with them. And if you don't want to do that, then it's difficult. Also, there's no guarantee of success, obviously. Even if you hire the best fundraiser, there's never a guarantee of success. So the money you spend, you will spend anyways. There's some people who work on commission base, but that's very few, and often in the fundraising community, that's also not regarded as very professional. So many people don't want to do that. They have a fee, obviously. They offer a service, so they have to be paid for that service. But we think that those resources, that budget, could be used better somewhere else. Because if you train your own staff in proposal writing, for example, through attending online courses, through organizing a workshop in your organization, etc., then you will always have this capacity within your organization. Because the thing is also, you write one proposal and then 6 months later, or maybe 3 months later, you have to write another. And then you have to again hire a consultant, and that gets expensive very, very quickly. So if you develop that capacity within your own organization, you will actually save a lot of money. You'll have that investment in training, but then you can do everything internally. And that in the long term makes much more sense. So we advise against outsourcing proposal writing completely. We'd say it's better to develop those skills internally. There are some things that you can outsource, for example, proofreading. That is something that I always recommend, because it is so important that you have the least amount of mistakes in your work possible. And so you can outsource this process of proofreading and also have someone here. It's an advantage if they don't know your project, because they'll probably find more mistakes, and they will also find like the logical mistakes if you're losing the red thread, or if it's not possible to understand. So yeah, in general, outsourcing the entire proposal writing is probably not such a great idea, and if you can, you should develop those skills internally. Here we have another much more simple picture of the grant cycle. We've talked about this last week, but just to make sure again that we are all on the same page. The grant cycle, a bit more simple than the fundraising cycle. Here we don't have the strategy in the middle, etc. But it's about first finding donors. So at the very beginning, you kind of need a business plan. So that's what we were talking about. You need a project plan or a business plan. You need to know what you want to do, because if you don't have that information, it's also going to be very difficult for you to find donors. If you don't know what you're looking for, then what are you doing? So you need a project plan first, or a draft proposal, whatever you want to call it. Then after you find donors with the techniques we talked about, I have a quick slide about that as well. You engage with them, you network, you talk to them, you find out what they want, and then you apply. And in this third stage is where you send the proposal, where you talk to the potential donors and send them whatever they want of you. If it's an open call, you follow the guidelines. If they said, oh, just send me a pitch deck, you send a pitch deck. If they want a concept note, you do that. So when is the right time to send a proposal? We've already said it's the last stage of this process. After you've networked, after obviously you've identified great donors, sometimes you will find those open calls. The broader they are, the more applications they will get. We've seen calls where it was very broad in Asia, where there's like 2,000 to 3,000 proposals for one call for applications, and in the end they can fund maybe 20 initiatives. So the competition is crazy in those open calls, also because they did get distributed so widely. So while it makes sense obviously to answer to those calls if they are a great fit, but only if they are, the other way of fundraising, the other way of mobilizing resources that I think also happens a lot, and that can be a better use of resources in the long term, is to network and then to negotiate. Because we think actually that around 70% of all the money in development is awarded through direct negotiations, not through open calls, but through connections and talking and directly talking to the people who give the money and developing a connection with them, and then asking for the kind of support that you need. So in those circumstances, when there's no open call, obviously when there's an open call, usually it has a deadline. So then you send the proposal by the deadline latest, not a week, not a day before the deadline. It's way better to send it a week before or something like that, but before the deadline. But if it's a negotiation, you kind of need that that feeling, that understanding of when to send something. Obviously, it's not when you reach out. It's not, you don't identify a good donor and then send them an email and say, hi, we are NGO, this and that, and here's a proposal, because then you will probably get ghosted. You will not get an answer. But you reach out, you ask them to talk to you, you organize a meeting. And then at some point, yes, you do have to ask, because that's another mistake that NGOs makes. Many NGOs ask too early, and then other NGOs just never ask, because then they think, oh, now we're talking, now it's rude, and they kind of miss the point. So you need to develop this kind of understanding of when is the right time to ask. But often the donors will also talk to you about this and say, oh, we've met 3 times, we really like your project, can you send us a proposal? Can you send us a concept note? Can you send us a pitch deck? And then obviously that's your cue to send your stuff over. If they don't do that, at some point you can also ask, oh, we're starting this project, and would you maybe be interested in funding us? Be specific here. No, don't ask in supporting us, but say in funding us at this point in time, because that is going to be the difference between getting an answer and not. Because if you just ask for support, it's super like if you just ask for support, it's very easy for them to dismiss you, because what is support? Support can be anything. If you ask for something specific, you will get a specific answer, which might be no, but then at least you know. So when you ask, be as specific as you can. And again, if it's a fixed process, you will know the deadline, so you will know when to send something. If it's just a negotiation, you have to develop this understanding, this feeling a little bit of when is the right time. The 3 steps that we talked about, just a quick recap. You have donor research, where you find out who is a good fit. So who are the donors that might be interested in your work? So you research like-minded organizations, you research donor websites, you use your own contacts, you ask current and former donors. They might fund you again, might keep funding you, or they might recommend you to someone. They might know about some programs that you didn't know about. So asking your network of current and former donors of what they think is always a good idea, because they can give you great feedback sometimes. Then there's databases, like our database. I mean, this picture here is the Ford Foundation database that you can find where the Ford Foundation funded. We have a donordatabase.org, where you can find good donors. And there's other databases that work with different kind of data. We will be talking about one a little bit later in the end, because we actually have something great to offer you. But for example, you can use transparency data to find out who funds what and where. And the initiative I'm actually going to talk about is called AIDA. Just already keep that in the back of your head. And then there's tax documents. So you can also check tax documents for information. In the US, everybody has to share everything about their taxes, except for presidential candidates, I guess. In those tax documents, they're called 990PF. You can find a lot of important information. And we actually have an online course about how to read a 990PF. So if you want to learn about that, you can check out that online course and learn how to analyze and find all that information in the 990PF. Then you have the engagement step, the networking. So you can use websites again, LinkedIn, to find a person to connect with. Person is important here. Don't send an email to the info address, because then nobody feels like they are specifically asked. But try to find a specific person to address. People give to people. People establish connections to other people. So you have to find one person that you can somehow connect with. Either they are the one responsible for the kind of grant you want to apply for, or you have some other connection, whatever, you went to the same university, you know them from somewhere, you worked at the same place, whatever it might be. Then you can request a meeting. Either if you're in the same city, you can meet in the same city. Otherwise, you can just organize a Zoom meeting or Teams or whatever you use, and use social media to connect. And when you have that meeting, ask questions. Listen more than you talk yourself, because what you want to do there is, yes, you want to present your work, but you want to learn about what they want to fund. You want to learn about their priorities. You want to learn how to write your proposal, and which information you can actually use for your proposal. So you want to listen more than you're talking. Then we have this area that we call donor stewardship. So that is actually a point that is part of the networking engagement with your current donors, which is something that many people forget. And it's also important when you think of your proposal, because when you engage with your donors regularly on a quarterly basis, and not only when you send the report, you kind of keep that connection, and you can get more information about what they want to do in the future, where they're moving, if you can send another proposal, how to make it look, etc. So to develop a good relationship, you can share photos and information, add them to your newsletter. You can invite them to field visits, events, etc. So there's many ways you can engage with your current donors. And you should do that, because they are the ones that have already trusted you once, and they are much more likely to trust you again. And then you have the question of eligibility, which is extremely important for your proposal. We have a full checklist on eligibility with, I think, 7 questions that you all have to clearly answer with yes, if you want to apply for an opportunity. Here we have an example of guidelines, a guide to complete your city foundation application. So you see this has a lot of admin information, logging into your account, etc. But it also tells you a lot about what they want to see in a proposal, how you should structure it, what should be included, and it gives you tips, and it gives you sometimes hidden clues. And once you read more and more of those guidelines, you will learn how to find them. The first questions that you have to ask, though, is if you should apply at all. And this sounds so basic, and often when this is live, I can see faces and they all go like, yeah, of course we know. But when you're on the other side, you would be surprised how many applications we see that were submitted to an opportunity they were never eligible for, either because they're in a different country, they're using different methodology, or budget was way out of range, whatever. So all of those things have to be a good fit. And then again, those guidelines give you clues and intelligence for your proposal that you can use, because you do want to tailor your proposal perfectly to the donor's needs, and you do want to understand exactly what they want to see. And they often hide that information in the guidelines. And it also provides an opening to connect. Yesterday, we had a question in the Q&A, like what happens if I don't understand something about the guidelines? Well, that's a great opportunity to ask a good question. And then you can connect with that particular donor and find out more and establish a relationship. Yeah, I've talked about that a bit. The guidelines, super important. They give you all the information you need to write a good proposal, and you should follow them to the dot. So even if it says about formatting, maybe you don't like Times New Roman, but use the font that they tell you to use the size that they tell you to use. Don't write more words than they tell you to write, because they will just not count, not read them anymore. They will just stop reading wherever the word count stops. So just follow the guidelines and read them again and again, and see if you can find those tricks and clues that are sometimes hidden in there. Because which clues does it give you? It tells you which parts of the proposal you should focus on. If there's a super detailed description on what they want to see on justification, but not so much description on activities, then you probably know that they want you to focus on the justification. And they often want that, because justification, like when we look at this text, we always think that the description of what we want to do is more important than explaining why we want to do it. But from the outside perspective, it's much more important to understand why you want to do something than to understand how you want to do it. Because if the donors read your proposal and they don't understand the reasoning behind your project, then the project can be perfect, but they will still not fund it if they don't understand the problem. Also, if they cannot see how your project is relevant for their mission, then they will, it doesn't matter how well your activities are described, they will not be interested. So focusing on that part often makes sense, and often you can find that info in the guidelines. They will also tell you what they want to see in a proposal. So they will tell you, like, sometimes it's a bit hidden, and it's often not in the smartest, packaged in the smartest way, but they will often tell you the percentage of core costs that you can include, or how to deal with currencies, etc. And often those things also point to common mistakes. So for example, if you see guidelines and they say, please check your math, that probably means that many people who apply for that opportunity have wrong budgets. So if you are super careful that your budget is correct, maybe nicely structured, maybe looks nice even, then you're already above so many of the others, because the donors told you, oh, this is something we focus on because so many mistakes happen here. Or if they keep mentioning specific words, like if they keep talking about sustainability, then focus on your sustainability plan, because it's in some way they are showing you that that is the part that is important for them. So just keep that in mind, and read the guidelines carefully and more than once. Because all of this process, reading the guidelines, but also talking to donors, networking, even the research gives you information on the donors. So use that information when you write the proposal. It doesn't make sense that you've talked to them 3 times and you know all the details of the program they want to fund, and then either you don't tell the fundraiser if it was 2 different people, or you don't use it correctly. So use that information. You can also try to find out if a call is very competitive before you submit, to assess your chances. Because if you're not 100% sure if it's a good fit and you already know, oh, there will be 3,000 others applying, then maybe your energy is not spent in the best way if you just focus on that opportunity. But if you find out, oh, there's not many proposals being sent for this opportunity, then your chances are much higher. It makes sense. You can't always find this out, but maybe you did throughout the process. And then tailor your proposal to the donor's requirements to make sure that it's the perfect fit. And then we get to this third stage where you actually apply and send your proposal in. What should you send? That's a very common question that we get. Is it always a proposal? Is it a concept note, a letter of interest, a pitch deck? What should you send over? And that obviously depends a lot. And the more you've connected with the donor before and the more you've networked and talked to them, the better you will know what they want to see. Probably they already told you, send us a proposal, or we like to see proposals. We like to see pitch decks. We like to see short concept notes. Or sometimes they directly tell you, obviously, but you kind of also get a feeling of what they want to see. And if you're absolutely not sure, you can ask. The difference between those things, we'll talk more about that next week. But a proposal, you know what that is now. We've defined it. A concept note is usually shorter and often focuses much more on the why. It doesn't have so many details about implementation yet, about activities, etc. Often doesn't have a full budget, just some numbers. Letter of interest is even shorter and includes more like of a very short description and a call to action. Then you have a pitch deck, which is a word taken from the startup scene kind of. And it's a PowerPoint presentation of often less than 10 slides that is like really succinct, really interesting, nice looking presentation of your project. But again, that's not a proposal. So when they ask you for a proposal, you can't send a pitch deck. Usually when you send a pitch deck, you should be requested to do so. Otherwise, many donors don't respond so well to it, especially if they are institutional, very traditional donors. Then how can you make it interesting? How can you make your proposal interesting? Because as we learned, you have a huge competition. So you want to be the special one. You want to stick out of the pile. So one way to do that is networking, talking to donors, making yourself known so that when they see your name on the paper, they recognize your name and say, oh, we've talked to that person 3 times and now they apply. Oh, that's great. Let's look at this carefully. But if you can't do that, you can still use your knowledge, use the knowledge that you've gained throughout the networking process to learn about the donor, what they want to see. It's one way to make it interesting. You can also use tools like storytelling to make it less dry, because the proposal doesn't have to be a complete technical document. A proposal doesn't have to bore you to death. It can be interesting. You can include case studies, stuff like that, to kind of break up a page. Obviously, if the guidelines tell you just text, just this, or if you apply to the European Commission that has a very strict system, that's a different thing. But if you have been talking to someone for a while and they say, send us something, you can try to make the proposal look nice and be more interesting. Use visual media. So pictures, if you have the opportunity, sometimes video, graphics, etc., to make to break up the page and make it more interesting. And use the KISS method. So keep it short and simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't write more than you have to just to fill pages. This very high degree of competition means that the donors have to read a lot. So you don't want to make them read through 20 pages. If what you're saying on 20 pages could have been said on 5. So try to keep it as short as possible, as long as necessary, so that you can keep donors engaged. Okay, now in the end, just a short, quick tips on the title, because the proposal title is actually the very first thing that people see. First, they see the proposal, so format is important, make it look nice, but then they read the title. So the title already has a huge role to play. So a great proposal title should inform the donor of the project's main focus. So what's the project about? The location, where are you implementing the project? And if possible, even already your unique selling point. If you have if you work with technology, something innovative, something like that, or what is that called? I just remembered the German word now, which is like robots and stuff, where they have artificial intelligence, sorry, AI, AI or something, or an app, mobile app, etc. Put that in the name of your proposal if you can, so to catch the donor's attention and to make them remember you. Because if you use robotics in an agricultural project or something like that, that's special, so they remember that, and so you want to do that. So we have a long article about how to draft great proposal titles on proposals4ngos.com, so you can also check out that article if you want to learn more about that. And then the cover letter is also belongs to the proposal. We'll not cover it next week because it's not technically part of the proposal, but it's also important that you include that cover letter or the email text or whatever it is. So you need a brief explanation of the project and organization, brief, not too long, not a full introduction of your organization. You have to refer to the past contacts you had with them, or even past funding if you had any. That people don't do that. So they just write as if they meet someone for the first time, even though maybe they've had 2 meetings before and received a grant before. So always remind them that you've already been in contact with them. You can indicate the size of the project and the budget if necessary. Why are you approaching this donor? What's the reasoning behind this? Maybe because you've talked to them, they've offered you something, etc., or you think that it's a great overlap, stuff like that. Describe quickly the contents of the attached full proposal, and very important, provide contact information. And that's also important for the proposal. They should have contact information, because often those things get torn apart, they get printed out, and then one part goes here, one part goes there. And if it doesn't have contact information, it's an issue for you because they can't contact you. They're not going to search through their emails to try and figure out where this came from. Make it as easy as possible for donors, for people reading your proposals. Yeah, and in general, last tip that I've already mentioned before, but it is so important, make sure that your proposal is tailored to your donor, because they do want to see that, they do want to see proposals that help them fulfill their own mission, their own objectives, and that is what will do that. Yeah, and as promised, I have one really great tool to present to you. It's one of our partners called AIDA, and they actually work with transparency data that is shared by hundreds and thousands of NGOs worldwide and donors. And they use that data and provide it in a form that you can actually work with it to learn more about what other NGOs do, what donors do, what kind of projects they fund, how they fund, etc. It's very, very interesting. So you can access, use, and search and execute analysis on the total aid interventions of development agencies from all countries in a single data services platform. And there's, for example, there's over 1 million project activities and more than 1,500 development agencies worldwide that share their data, and you can access information about their grants there. That is an amazing tool for donor research that we really recommend. And it also gives you the opportunity to take graphic insights that are presented in nice graphics that you can use for your reports, that you can use for your own donor research, and just for your own understanding. So we have partnered with them, and there's a great discount offer at the moment to use AIDA 3 months for free if you go to the website AIDA Tools and check out what they have to offer. You see, usually it's a paid service because it's such an amazing service to have all that insight, and they already prepared all the data so that you don't have to actually do the analysis in an Excel sheet, which almost nobody likes, but you can access the data in a form that you can actually immediately work with it and understand how others get funded, how development agencies do fund, and from that information you can again derive which areas you should invest in, where you which donors you can approach, which approaches you should use, etc. So yeah, check out this service. It's really great, and it's really, really helpful for your donor research if you want to go about this in a professional way. The link to this will also be included in the follow-up emails. So if I was too fast for you, you can check that. But it's also in the chat right now, so you can just click it and check out that service. We also have another offer for you, because we will talk about this more next week, but this has already been an introduction. We have a resource guide about proposal writing. It's more than 300 pages of our combined knowledge about proposal writing. And it also includes sample proposals, so successful proposals from others, a full proposal template, and this checklist that I was talking about. Usually we sell this at a price of $25, which is already like a very, very low price, because this book could be sold at much more. But today we want to offer it as very cheap at $2.99 for you. It's almost like nothing, but we want to open up this opportunity for as many people as possible. So the link for that is in the chat at the moment. So if you want to grab this book, if you wanted to grab it for a while, then this is your chance. It will never get cheaper than this, I can guarantee that. And if cost is an issue for you, then this is your chance. It's an amazing book that has helped hundreds of our customers. And yeah, I really recommend you go through it, you read it, and you take this opportunity. And again, it has a template that you just fill out, and that will also help you to write a first proposal draft. And as always, we have all these other courses on our website, specific ones like funding from USAID, the European Commission, etc. And you can get all of them for 30% off with the code PFN users. So if there's any course you fancy, you like for a while, then again, this is your chance. Use PFN users and get 30% off. And the courses you can find on philanthropia.org. But again, link will be included in the follow-up email. Yeah, thank you very much. This was the presentation. And next week, we will talk about the proposal writing process itself. So I hope you join again, and you will be there as well. And then we'll talk in much more detail about the parts of the proposal, what needs to go where, how to structure it, what to look out for. So we have a couple of questions. First question is, when writing an organizational budget, we add the overall budget as an annex. Is that okay? I'm not 100% sure what you mean. If you mean like when you write a budget for a project, usually you don't have to add the entire budget for your organization. Oftentimes, donors ask how high your budget is, but that is more to understand if you would be capable of dealing and administering a grant. So sometimes they want to know how big your entire budget is, to know if your budget is 20,000 per year and you apply for 100,000, then they might doubt that you can actually channel and administer that money. So that's why they sometimes ask that. I don't see anything against it if it's in an annex, because then people can still decide not to read it, but I wouldn't think it's necessary either if it's not requested. Then is there any other websites like AIDA for free? I don't know any others that present data like that, I think. But like we said, you can use it, you can try it for 3 months for free to start, and then move to the paid plan after that. Yes, we will share the recording of this webinar and the presentation. So you will receive that through email tomorrow, or maybe on Monday, depending a bit on how the downloading works, because with Zoom, we never know. But yeah, you'll be able to watch it. The discount for the guide, it's, I think, until the weekend, we said. So 2 days, it's just valid for 2 days. So you can use the link today, tomorrow, and Saturday, I think, and then it expires on Sunday. So I want so if you want to get that one, then I think this is the best chance. Okay, and now I just answered a wrong question. The first question just said an organizational BG, and I thought that was budget, but he meant the background. Okay. Yeah, the organizational profile or background is usually something we recommend you don't add, or as an annex, because often that is not contributing anything to your project. Because when you send a project proposal, it should be about the project and only the project, and not about your entire history. And also, when you talk about your own organization, be sure to only tell the stories that count, kind of, because I've seen so many organizational profiles that start with, oh, we are organization XY with the registration number, blah, blah, blah. And we are based in Nepal, country of Everest. So stuff that is absolutely not important to the project. And you don't want to include that because donors have very limited time and they don't want to spend their time reading stuff that they don't need to know. So always think, does it make sense? Do they need to know all of that or not? And definitely only as an annex if you want to include it, never inside the body of the proposal if it's not requested. There's a couple of more questions. The difference between traction and proposal writing. Actually, I don't know. I've never heard the word traction in this context. The mistakes when writing proposals, that is actually going to be a full section in next week's presentation. We'll have mistakes in proposal, or I think it's 2 weeks. It's a full presentation about the most common mistakes in proposal writing, because it's a great learning opportunity. So I recommend you join that time, and then I will share also about my own mistakes, stuff that I did in the past. Yeah, then there's one question about, I find it difficult to apply for grants when I have to fill in the form. How do I show my story when I'm limited by questions and also space? Yeah, that's very difficult. I think donors do that because they want to be able to compare different applications if they get so many. So then in those cases, it's even more important to network with donors beforehand if you can, because that way you have the chance to make yourself known and maybe already share parts of your story before you send the proposal. But it is a challenge, obviously, if you just have very limited word count. And there's also some donors who just don't want to know. They're not interested in story. They're not interested in pictures. They just want to know facts, and they want to fill out their own form where they put like how many points you get for which section and then just compare. So those cases, it is tricky. So if you feel like your story would be contributing to your success, then maybe in your donor research, maybe look more for donors that don't have those open calls, but that give you some more space and make it a little bit more difficult, different, like that want you to approach them in a different way. There's a question about if the guide includes information about the difference between a concept note and a proposal. Yes, it has some information on that as well. It has a couple of sections on the concept note and on the proposal and the differences and when to send which one. And then, yeah, I think I went through all the questions. Yeah, I think those were most of the questions. At least I don't see any further ones. And there's just something I see in the comment section. Someone clicked through to the guide and got enrolled in a course. Yes, that's how because the platform we work with just recently offers just to put downloadables up there, and we still have it in a course. So you enter the course and then you can download the book, the ebook, and that's how this goes. And we also have a full course that is promoted in that course, which is called Writing a Winning Proposal. That's a full online course, again, with video, text, quizzes, a workbook, etc. So that's has a bigger scope than just an ebook. and has a little bit, not necessarily more information, but differently packed, obviously, because an online course is different than an ebook. That's the main difference. Okay, then I think we're done for today. Thank you so much for being here again, for taking part in this webinar. And I hope to see you all again next week. I hope that you will join us for the next free session in 1 week, and we'll also see if we can maybe have another Q&A on Wednesday, but it's not confirmed yet, but you will get an email. We'll send out that stuff. We'll also send out the recording in the next day, so that if you've missed anything, you can rewatch it and you can join. And for now, I just want to wish you happy good weekend. Tomorrow is already Friday. Thanks so much for attending, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye bye.